Have you ever looked around and realized the world feels a little quieter than it used to? Not just the volume of it, but the rhythm, the conversations, the way life brushes past you a bit faster than before. Maybe the phone doesn't ring quite as often. Or maybe when it does, you hesitate for a second, wondering if it's good news, or something else entirely. There comes a time in life, often after 80, when these subtle changes stop being occasional and start becoming the new normal. If you're here, chances are you're noticing these shifts. Or maybe someone you care about is, and you're looking for answers. Either way, let me tell you something. You're not alone. Reaching your 80s is a remarkable milestone. It's a testament to your strength, your endurance, and all the love and loss you've carried through the years. But what people don't talk about enough is that this stage of life brings challenges no one quite prepares you for. We spend so much time focusing on how to stay healthy, how to keep moving, how to eat right, and all of that matters. But what about the emotional terrain? What about the quiet moments that catch you off guard? The days when you wonder why the world doesn't seem to see you the same way anymore? That's what this video is about. Not to bring you down, but to lift you up. Because when we name the hard things, we take away some of their power. And when we talk about them, we find strength in each other. Today, we're diving into 5 hard truths about life after 80. These are not small things, but they are real things. And facing them head-on, with courage, can be one of the most powerful ways to reclaim this chapter of your life. Let's start with the first truth. It's one many people don't expect, or at least they hope they won't feel. But it creeps in slowly and settles in deeply. The quiet disappearance of your social circle. You know, when you're younger, your days are filled with plans, errands, visits, calls. You could walk into the local diner and know half the folks sitting there. Your birthday meant cards and visitors, sometimes even surprise parties. But now, the calls are fewer, the invitations slow down, friends you once laughed with weekly start fading from your calendar, and it's not because anyone stopped caring. It's time, it's distance, it's health issues and memory slips and grandkids moving across the country. Some friends have passed, some just don't drive anymore. And others, well, they're dealing with their own struggles. You wake up one morning and realize you haven't had a good, unhurried conversation in weeks. And even if you're independent, even if you like your peace and quiet, there's a hollowness in that silence that can't be ignored. I remember a man named Frank, 85, sharp as a tack. He used to go to the same coffee shop every single morning. No phone needed. His buddies would just show up. The staff knew his order by heart. It was more than just coffee. It was routine, it was connection, it was life. But one by one, those friends stopped coming. Some moved, some passed, some just stopped feeling well enough to make it out. One morning, Frank looked around and said, "It's strange. Used to be I'd walk in and they'd wave from across the room. Now I'm just the man in the corner booth." The truth is, loneliness at this age isn't always loud. It doesn't always look like tears or dramatic goodbyes. Sometimes it's just a long silence after dinner, or realizing you haven't laughed out loud in days, or that no one has asked how you're doing in a while. And while it's easy to feel like that's just how things are now, I want to gently challenge you. Connection doesn't come as easily anymore. No, but it's still worth reaching for. Maybe it's a church group you used to attend. Maybe it's a neighbor you nod to but haven't really talked with. Maybe it's a grandson who's always glued to his phone but lights up when you ask about his favorite band. These moments matter. You might have to make the first move now. That's not weakness, that's courage. You've come this far, and the strength you've built over the years, it's still there. Use it to open a new door, even if it's just a crack. A weekly phone call, a simple letter, a shared walk down the block. They add up. They always do. Now let's talk about something even more personal. Your body. By 80, it doesn't just whisper, it speaks in bold letters. The bounce back that used to come so easily, that starts to fade. A nap might leave you feeling more tired instead of refreshed. A small stumble might turn into weeks of recovery. One day you feel fine, and the next you're being told to monitor this or get that scan or we'll need to keep you overnight. And it's jarring. Helen, a woman I met not long ago. She's 80 and used to walk her neighborhood every day. She gardened, hosted book club, and was proud of her independence. One afternoon, she slipped while trimming a rose bush. Just a small fall. Nothing dramatic. But the recovery? It stretched on for months. Her energy drained. Her balance felt different. She told me, "I thought I was just taking a break, but my body treated it like a full stop." And she's right. After 80, rest doesn't always restore. Sometimes, if you're not mindful, it becomes decline. That's the thing no one tells you. Even when you're doing all the right things, eating well, walking, sleeping enough, your body still slows down. That doesn't mean you've failed. It just means the rules have changed. And now you get to learn how to play by these new rules, gracefully, gently, and on your terms. Instead of pushing through pain, you start listening to it. Instead of packing the calendar, you honor the days when your body says, "Let's take it easy." And that's not giving up. That's wisdom. You begin to move with intention, to sit with stillness and not feel guilty for it. You learn that strength now means something different. It means steadiness, presence, kindness to yourself. Because yes, your body may be slowing down, but your spirit, that can still be strong. In fact, it might be stronger than ever, because it's not tied to what you can lift or how far you can walk. It's tied to how deeply you've lived, how much you've learned, and how much you still have to give. So if you're noticing your body doesn't bounce back like it used to, you're not alone. You don't have to fight it. You just have to respect it. Care for it like the trusted companion it's been all your life. Give it rest, yes, but the kind of rest that renews, not the kind that fades you into the background. Take the walk, but take breaks. Stretch, but breathe. Nap, but wake with a plan, even if that plan is simply to sit in the sun and let your skin feel warm again. This chapter of life may ask more of you in patience and grace, but it still offers moments of beauty, quiet, steady, and full of meaning. There's something else that begins to creep in as you move through your 80s, and it's not just about the changes in your body or your social world. It's the growing realization that things you once did without even thinking now come with hesitation. It's subtle at first. Maybe you don't reach for the top shelf anymore without thinking twice. Maybe you catch yourself holding onto the banister a little tighter than you used to. Maybe you're driving a little slower on rainy days, not because you can't see, but because your reflexes just don't feel the same. One of the hardest pills to swallow in this stage of life is the growing need for help. Not because it's wrong to need help, we all do, but because when you've spent your whole life being the strong one, the one others leaned on, asking for help feels like surrendering something you're not quite ready to let go of. That independence, that self-reliance, it's been your armor, your pride. And now it's being chipped away, not all at once, but piece by piece. You might find yourself skipping the grocery store because the idea of carrying those bags feels overwhelming. You might pretend your shoulder doesn't hurt when your grandkid asks if you're okay. You might still be climbing the ladder to change that light bulb even though deep down you know it's not worth the risk. And you tell yourself, "I've got this," because that's who you've always been. But let me share something I heard once from George. He's 86 and has lived through more than most people can imagine. Built his own home. Raised 4 kids. Fixed every broken thing in the house with his own 2 hands. And he told me something after slipping on his icy driveway one winter. "It wasn't the fall that hurt," he said. "It was realizing I couldn't get up without help." That moment changed him. At first, it embarrassed him. But what he found, over time, was that allowing his daughter to show up once a week with groceries wasn't a burden. It was a gift, not just for him, but for her too. Their time together became something neither of them realized they needed until it was there. A small routine, a warm cup of coffee, a real conversation. And one day, George looked at me and said, "It's strange. I spent so long trying to stay strong for everyone. I never realized how strong it feels to let someone care for you." You see, asking for help doesn't mean giving up your independence. In fact, it can protect it. Because when you allow others to support you, whether it's family or friends or even tools and devices, you're actually making it possible to do more, to stay safer, and to stay in control longer. Help doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be simple. A grab bar in the bathroom, a seat in the shower, a little cart for carrying groceries. These aren't signs of weakness. They're signs of wisdom. You're not trying to prove anything anymore. You're trying to live well, and that means accepting the supports that help you do just that. So if you're finding that some things are harder than they used to be, don't hide it. Don't carry that discomfort in silence. You are not a burden. You are a person who has lived, who has given, and who still deserves comfort, dignity, and care. There's something else that happens when you start needing more help, and it might sting a little more than you expect. It's when people stop looking directly at you, when the doctor speaks to your adult child instead of you, when the waitress at the diner talks loud and slow like you can't hear her, when someone assumes you're confused just because you took a second longer to answer. It doesn't happen all the time, and maybe not with people who know you. But out there, in stores, hospitals, waiting rooms, it happens. And it's one of the more painful realities of this age, feeling invisible. It's not always cruel. Most of the time, it's just careless. The world has gotten fast, faster than we ever imagined. And when you walk a little slower or speak a little softer, it's easy for others to rush right past you. But speed isn't the same as value. Your presence matters. And even if people stop noticing, that doesn't mean you have to stop showing up. Dorothy, she's 87 and volunteers at a small local museum. She knows history like the back of her hand. Lived through most of it, really. One day, a visitor walked in and asked the staff a question, something about the 1940s. Dorothy was standing right there, had the answer, but the question passed right by her. Not on purpose. The guest just didn't think to ask her. Later I asked her how she felt. She gave me a soft smile and said, "I'm used to it." But in that smile there was sadness. The kind that comes from being seen as background instead of the remarkable soul you still are. Here's the thing. You are not background. You are not just a chair in the corner of the room. You are a witness to decades of change, a living archive of stories, wisdom, and strength. And you don't have to shout to be heard, but you do have to speak. Don't let others define your space. Speak up at the doctor's office. Ask questions. Share your opinions even if no one asked. Tell your stories. Make eye contact. Sit tall. Your presence still matters, and sometimes you have to remind the world of that, not with anger, but with certainty. Even when society forgets how much you've lived through, you don't have to forget. Let your memories be your authority. Let your voice be your legacy in motion. And let every quiet act of showing up be your way of saying, "I'm still here, I still count." Because you do, and you always will. Somewhere in the quiet of daily life after 80, a strange feeling can begin to settle in. It's not loud, not something you always notice right away, but it's there, in the gaps between activities, in the long stretches of time when nothing is pressing and no one is calling. It's not sadness exactly. It's something more complicated. A restlessness, maybe. A question you didn't ask before but now lingers just beneath the surface. What now? You've worked. You've raised families. You've served others, supported causes, contributed to your community. You've been needed in more ways than most people can ever understand. But now the calendar has more blank space. The phone rings less. The pace has slowed, but the mind keeps going. And in that quiet, the memories flood in. You think of the things you did, and maybe the things you didn't. You remember people you've lost, choices you've made, and sometimes you catch yourself thinking, did I spend my time the right way? Did I tell them I loved them enough? Should I have traveled more? Taken more risks? Forgiven faster? These moments of reflection are natural. But if you're not careful, they can become something heavier. Regret. Not the sharp, sudden kind. The quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest like a stone. The kind that whispers, "What's left for me now?" But let me say this as clearly as I can. Your purpose does not retire when you do. It doesn't vanish because the world isn't asking for it in the same way. It's still there, alive, waiting, maybe in a different shape, but just as meaningful. I once spoke with a man named Robert. He was 89, a retired teacher who had spent over 40 years in the classroom. He told me that after he stopped working, he felt proud, but also strangely hollow. "I spent my whole life being needed," he said. "Now, no one needs me." But that wasn't true. He just hadn't yet found a new way to be needed. You see, the world still needs your voice, your presence, your compassion. It might not come in the form of a full-time job or parenting duties anymore, but it comes in the form of stories told to great-grandchildren. In the wisdom shared with a neighbor going through something hard. In the comfort you offer just by being someone who's lived through it all and is still here. Redefining purpose isn't about going back. It's about noticing what matters now. Maybe you no longer build things with your hands, but you build peace with your words. Maybe you no longer lead teams, but you lead by example. How you listen, how you show up, how you smile at a stranger who's having a bad day. Regret loses its power when we transform it into intention. Maybe you didn't take that trip, but you can still tell the story of why it mattered to you. Maybe you waited too long to say something, but you can say it now. There's still time to reach out, to mend a relationship, to leave a note, to share the lesson you learned. Some of the most powerful things you'll do in this life might happen right now, not on a stage or in the headlines, but in quiet acts of love, forgiveness, presence. Sitting beside someone who's grieving, offering encouragement to a young person who's unsure, laughing at yourself instead of being bitter. These things matter. They ripple in ways you may never fully see. This final stretch of life isn't a slow fade. It's a deepening, a chance to become more you than you've ever been. You don't have to prove anything anymore. You just have to be here, honestly, intentionally, with your heart open and your head held high. And if you're feeling unsure about what you still have to give, let me remind you, your presence alone carries weight. Your patience, your perspective, your ability to see what really matters. That's rare. That's needed. That's a kind of power younger generations are hungry for, even if they don't know how to ask for it. So don't wait for permission to shine. Share your story, even if no one asked. Show up, even if no one invited you. Offer your kindness, even if the world is busy and distracted. You have earned your place in this world 100 times over, and now, more than ever, your life can be a beacon, not of perfection, but of resilience. Not of busyness, but of meaning. There's one last thing I want to say, and I hope you really let this land. You still have choices. Even now, even here. You can choose to let the silence overwhelm you, or you can fill it with music you love, calls you initiate, memories you pass on. You can choose to ask for help or to keep struggling silently. You can choose to fade into the background or to raise your hand and say, "I still have something to say." You can choose to forgive yourself for the things that didn't happen, the words you didn't say, the paths you didn't take. And you can choose to honor everything that did happen, the love you gave, the moments you showed up, the strength you offered even when no one knew how much it cost you. This isn't the end of your story. This is the most profound chapter yet. It's the part where every word counts. where every gesture, no matter how small, holds meaning. Where your quiet strength, your stillness, your truth become your greatest gifts. So if you've made it this far in the video, I want to thank you. Not just for watching, but for being here. For still choosing to show up for life in whatever way you can. That, in itself, is a kind of grace the world needs more of. Leave a comment below and share one thing from this video that spoke to you. Maybe it's something you felt but never said out loud. Or maybe it's something you needed to hear today. Your story matters. And when you share it, someone else might feel a little less alone. If you found this video helpful, please take a moment to like it, subscribe to our channel, Strong Elderly Life, and tap the bell so you never miss an episode. We're here to encourage, to support, and to remind you that every single day you wake up is a chance to live with purpose and power. Here's to living your best life, at every age, and especially now. You've come so far, and there's still so much beauty ahead. Thanks for being here. We'll see you in the next video.